Civil War, which took place from 1861 to 1865, has a residual effect that impacts me daily. The reason is, I am a United States revenue stamp collector. Due to the Civil War, the United States government passed on July 1, 1862, an act mandating the payment of a tax on commodities and services, thereby causing the creation of the first United States adhesive revenue stamps, a subset for which I collect. The Revenue Act went into effect on October 1, 1862. Shown here are 3 examples of the beautiful engravings created by engravers Butler and Carpenter of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Note that there is a different inscription on the bottom of each stamp. For example, bank check, playing cards, and foreign exchange. As the face value of the stamp increased, so did the size of the stamp. To help the general public apply the correct tax stamp, the United States government decided that for every item taxed, there would be a unique stamp. Here is a short list of inscriptions. The majority of the stamps were for the use on documents, like agreements, bank checks, certificates, and mortgages. But items such as playing cards and other proprietary objects like perfume, medicine, and photos were also subject to a tax. With all these inscriptions, it gives revenue collectors the ability to specialize. For example, I collect the 6 playing cards stamps. 1.5 billion United States adhesive first issue revenue stamps were distributed. The denominations of these stamps ranged from 1 cent to $200, and with the different inscriptions, a total of 102 unique stamps were produced. This was the government's attempt to better track the monies that were collected for each taxed service and commodity. The United States Department of Internal Revenue, what we all too well know today as the IRS, sold and distributed the required stamps to the venues that needed them. Difficulties arose because the Department of Internal Revenue was miles and possibly days away from venues that would ultimately be using the stamps. So at times, some stamps were unavailable. Also, the printer had to engrave 102 different plates and then print thousands of sheets of each stamp and apply adhesive to the back, followed by perforating the sheets for easy separation of each individual stamp. Understandably, it was impossible for the printer to fill orders as millions of stamps were required by October 1st. Due to these difficulties, on December 25, 1862, less than 3 months after the act became active, an amendment was passed that allowed for any stamp of the correct denomination to be used to pay the tax regardless of the inscription. This eased the burden on clerks who now only had to keep the correct denomination on hand. By 1865, revenue stamped paper was produced that had the stamp printed on the final document. As shown on this bank check, the engraved design turns a plain piece of paper into a very attractive document, while also serving to collect the required 2-cent bank check tax. While still raising money to cover the cost of the Civil War, in 1871 the Department of Internal Revenue issued 2 new stamp types, a blue documentary stamp and a green proprietary stamp, each with a black vignette of George Washington. Here is a sampling of other tax stamps issued by the United States government, but will not be discussed as time does not permit. Lastly, privately requested stamps were engraved by Butler and Carpenter. A manufacturer could submit a design to the engraver for a fee, and separate plates would be created. These very attractive stamps, which bear the manufacturer's name along with the words U.S. Internal Revenue, as if to be backed by the U.S. government, are today called private die match-in-medicine stamps. Here is a close-up of the 1-cent Corning and Tappan perfume tax stamp, which shows Cupid, instead of using his arrow to bring about the desires and emotions of love, is spritzing the young lady with Corning and Tappan perfume. On July 1, 1863, the Revenue Act was rescinded. but bank checks, tobacco, and alcohol continued to be taxed. But why would anyone collect revenue stamps? Both stamps shown here were printed over 145 years ago by the exact same printer, Butler and Carpenter. The used U.S. No. 65 postage stamp on the left catalogs for $3, while color varieties catalog for over $1,000. Whereas the proprietary revenue stamp on the right catalogs for a mere 50 cents. Both are attractive examples of early stamps, yet the one on the left is 6 times more costly than the one on the right. This is due to many factors, the main factor being that the hobby of postage stamp collecting is more popular than revenue stamp collecting, thereby producing a smaller demand for the revenue stamps, even though there are fewer revenue stamps available. The catalog prices mentioned are based on the 2009 Scott's U.S. Specialized Catalog, which lists all the stamps shown in this slideshow and is available at most libraries. Today, many revenue stamps catalog for 20 cents, whereas none of the U.S. 19th century postage stamps catalog for that value. I am Kristen Patterson, and I hope that you enjoyed this quick introduction to U.S. revenue stamps. For more information, visit revenuer.org or the American Philatelic Society at stamps.org.